Hi, I'm Gus Rosendale. You might know me from certain TV newscasts, but the other part of my life we're exploring here today, I'm an alumnus of the Stecher and Horowitz School, and we're here chatting about Mr. Stecher and Mr. Horowitz as they herald their 60 years working together. So take me back to you finding the house on Maple Avenue, because it wasn't in very good shape. It was a pretty sad-looking thing, wasn't it?
We were having dinner with some people we knew. He was a builder, and it was Christmas time. And he just mentioned that he had a house on Maple Avenue that he was considering buying and tearing it down and putting up two, because it was a double lot. And Mel had become ill on a previous tour, and we had decided that we would probably need a second career as opposed to just going on concert tour. And we thought we should open up a music school because we'd been involved with summer camps for many, many years. And we were always involved with teaching young people and encouraging young people. So we said, his name was Monty Kronberg. We said, Monty, could we see the house? He said, what are you going to do with it? I said, we might want to open up a school. And the proposition that we gave him was that if we bought the building and paid him as the builder who would really make the profit, it would give us the building, he'd make the profit, he doesn't have to tear the building down.
But it was in terrible, terrible shape. And I remember that my brother and other friends said, my God, those guys are crazy, what they're buying. And
it was a little more risky than that.
Yeah, and we paid for the house that time. It was a third of an acre. And I think at the time we paid $10,500. And that's how it began.
And we took the money from the previous tour that we had in South America. It was a 10-week tour when Mel lost 51% of his blood. And it was a bleeding ulcer. And we had X amount of bucks, I think it was about, we had saved $10,000 on that
tour, I believe so.
On that tour, and we put cash down. We went to a bank in Far Rockaway and got an additional loan of some kind. He had faith in us, Mr. Fiedler, and we opened up that following year.
When he opened up in September, and we opened the school with the first year with 40 students. And we had to think of a way of getting it known to the area. So Norman and I got into the car, we drove around all the 5 towns, and when we would see a baby carriage outside the house or a bicycle, a smaller bicycle, we would take the address down, and then we would send them out notifications of school opening or call them on the telephone. So that's how we ended up with 40 students.
I remember I designed a welcoming sort of card that it's a new school created by 2 pianists who felt it was important to bring to this community a quality education in music. And the telephone did ring a few times, and then we called. And in September, as you said, we opened up with 40, 45 students.
But when I look back, I think it's interesting that we always wanted to interview every new student. We didn't leave it up to anybody else on the staff. And even when we went on tour and we had the school, if we'd be away for 6 weeks, our secretary, Marjorie Raskin, would answer any calls with new prospects, and she'd say, we will be glad to interview you when Mr. Stecher and Mr. Horowitz return. And we just, that's how you build a relationship. We always interviewed everyone. We cared about each of the students. And at the end of the years, it was remarkable. I mean, we remember practically all of them.
May I just say that when we would interview, here's the same sofa, it's still here. When we would interview them, and this shy little child would be sitting there, and the mother would be saying, or the father, oh, he's a genius, or he's this, or he's that. And we never had an opportunity to speak to the child directly. And I would sometimes ask the parent to leave the room. They were very, very unhappy about that. But we felt we couldn't communicate with the child on his or her level. And we didn't need a parent answering for what we wanted to hear from the child.
What were you looking for when you would interview us?
There were many, many times they didn't know anything about music.
Yeah.
I said, "What are your interests?" And they said, "Oh, we love to draw, or we love math." There wasn't that much computer at that time, or cell phones, and I liked to sit in my room and think, and you just get a feeling of each child, and everything we heard we wrote down as far as
But of
notating.
course, if they had studied before,
Right.
then we listened to them play, and they brought their music with them, and we made all notes of what they did that was very positive, and then the areas where they needed a great deal of work. So we had all of this before they started, and we knew exactly where to place them, but we did all of this, and then we would turn them over to the different faculty members.
And the time you were doing this, there were probably not a lot of schools like this in the
There was
country.
one called the South Shore.
One in the 5
The
towns.
South Shore. It was on Mill Road.
Okay.
But they weren't. But
It was rare.
But throughout the country, I would say the prep schools like ours were affiliated with conservatories or colleges that had prep schools.
Gotcha.
But we were very unique to be running a prep school.
Especially with a curriculum and requirements. For instance, as you remember, the theory classes on Saturday mornings, which people never heard of this, but it was a requirement. They had to come every other week, and we had alternate classes, and Miss Gibson, Joyce Gibson, whom we met in 1961, was also teaching them, I think, out on the island somewhere.
In Amityville. I believe.
Amityville, somewhere out there. And she was very well trained as a pianist. She came from Salt Lake City. And she said, "I'd love to join your faculty." And she was with us for 39 years.
A lot of your faculty was there a long
Oh,
time.
yeah.
What do you attribute that to?
The belief in what we do, I believe, the mission, our standards were extremely high. We never relented to anybody who wanted to deviate. They had to match what we were looking for.
But also, during the history of the school of 39 years, every student that we had there, even though they were working with other teachers, we always wanted them to know, and we felt this very sincerely, they were our students as well. In other words, just because they was working with Mrs. So-and-so, they were Stecher and Horowitz's students. And we always had that philosophy.
Was there a point when you realized this was taking off? It was a bit of a gamble
Oh,
to
yes.
start. When did you know this?
First year.
First year.
First year. I think we almost doubled our enrollment the following year.
Wow.
And one begets another. A parent tells another parent. There were some who resented. They didn't want to come on Saturdays or some, but they realized it was adding to their understanding and comprehension of music. We were just not teaching by finger and by rote. We were teaching how to analyze the music and how to see how it's built from its inception up. And then, of course, in theory class, you learned about the composers, you learned about the form and analysis of the sonata form, the concerto form, and all sorts of things that went on and on.
But I think to your question, we knew the school took off from the very beginning because we started in 60, 63 we had our first expansion. And then we had, during the time of the school, the 39 years, we had 5 expansions.
Right.
So, and we bought the property next door, so it was always growth.
It's funny, there was a house next door owned by Mrs. McCusker, and we said, in the early times, if ever you sell your property, Mrs. McCusker, we have the first option. And we didn't get that option, I think, for 25 or 30 years. She lasted that long.
Well, you're patient. You were
Yeah.
patient.
But we got it.
Yeah. Talk about how the student body changed over the years. But you would have a range of talent. You would have, obviously, students who were headed towards a life as a professional musician. And then you had students like me who maybe they loved music but weren't very talented at that. They weren't going to make it as a profession. So what was the, makeup or diversity of the student body in that way? And it wasn't just single focused on one thing.
No,
So
for instance, we each had students that we thought had tremendous potential. I was wrong in one in particular. For instance, our attorney had a son who was a very sweet boy, but could not focus. And I took him on, I think at the age of 6, and he lasted with me until he graduated high school, which was a long time.
That's a long time.
And the most advanced piece I think played was Lotus Land by Cyril Scott, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is not a great piece, but something clicked with him, and he's now the head of the department at Indiana University.
Wow.
Of
I think electronic music,
contemporary and electronic music.
That's impressive.
And we were in Washington, D.C. at the Phillips Collection presenting one of our winners, and there was somebody there who had come from Indiana University, and I mentioned, did you know Dr. Haas?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he was my professor. He was wonderful. And whoever could predict that this would have happened? Conversely, Melvin had a marvelous student whose father didn't want him to be a musician.
And Arthur Fagan. He's also happens to be at
Bloomington.
Bloomington, Indiana University. His father did not want him to be a musician, and he thought that I was too strong an influence.
Mm-hmm.
And he studied with me for about 6 or 8 years. And I said to Mr. Fagan, no matter what you do, you can take Arthur away, I guarantee you he will be a musician. And he's a very, very successful musician. But we always really enjoyed working with students that we knew were not going to be professional musicians. We felt it was very important to educate them, give them a love of music, so they in turn will attend concerts, will support music organizations. We need supporters as well as musicians.
It's a dimension in everyone's life, really, that gives them peace of mind sometimes.
And discipline.
Oh, yeah.
I want to ask about that. Maybe that takes you to my next question about the recitals, which were some of the most terrifying things for a lot of us. We had to memorize.
Oh, yes.
We had to memorize, and we had to dress, and we had to rehearse. And I remember there'd be the rehearsal where you have to go in, practice your bow, and it was the two of you sitting there, and maybe your teacher was off to the side.
That's correct.
Pretty formal situation for 7-year-olds.
Sure.
Why was that so important to do it that way?
One learns a great deal from performance. I mean, even skipping to professionals.
Excuse me, look at you now, you're performing.
It's a great sense of accomplishment to do that.
Yes.
And we prepare them where we want them to have success. And that's what, they have success, they enjoy the concerts, they continue with their education. We spend a lot of time, like when we have the concerts, if you would remember, Norman would be involved with one area, I'd be involved in another area, but we would go to the rooms,
Prior.
the practice rooms, 3 weeks before the concert.
Yes.
And let's say if I went in, I would hear you play your piece, and I'd make my own notes. You knew the section A, but you didn't know section B. I'd go back next week, and I'd hear it again. So we, in addition to the teachers, we were there 3 weeks. Then on stage, if we had a student who wasn't prepared, this is what was unique, that if they were not prepared, Norman and I would call, or have Marjorie Raskin call the parents and say, we would like to have Harold come to the school this week for an extra lesson. We would give the extra lessons just to make sure that they would be prepared. And on Saturday and Sundays before the concert, if there were 8 or 10 that were not ready, we would have them in.
It's not so much that they would be prepared. We didn't want them to have a failure.
That's right.
Right.
We wanted them to realize they could achieve. And if they needed additional help, it was generally because they didn't practice properly or they didn't practice.
And then also, as you probably remember, that when they did have to perform, I was always at the stage door.
Yes.
And I would give them a pep talk before they went out. And
That hallway, I remember that hallway.
yeah, it was a long hallway.
Long, very long hallway.
And it was only maybe, what, 30 feet?
Though it seemed a lot longer.
But it seemed like a half a mile to most of the students walking down the hallway.
Yeah.
But Norman would make sure they got to the hallway, and I'd be in the stage entrance. And we always made sure that they would have a success as much as we could.
But we treated it like a party afterwards. There was always a reception, if you remember, and punch and cookies and such. And Melvin's mother, who lived about 3 miles away for about 25 years, used to bake all the cookies. She started at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we would pick them up maybe at 10 or 11 o'clock in time for all the concerts that day. And that went on and on and on. She lived to be 95.
But I have to say, honestly, that going to the school 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, I never ever felt, I know Norman didn't either, that we had to go to work. We never felt that way. In our entire career, we always enjoyed what we did. There were many hardships traveling as we did on tour, but we made it. And we had a certain feeling of being grateful. If we were on tour, we were grateful to the people who booked us. And we always wanted to make sure we would have a successful concert where all their members would join again and enjoy the concert. So it was a great feeling that we didn't feel pressured. We loved what we did.
I don't know if you remember, several times during the year there was a big truck in the driveway. It was our truck.
Okay.
On preparing for us to go on tour.
Right.
And I remember when the students would see the truck, oh, they're going away.
But not only the students,
Teachers.
I must say the faculty
The cat's
was
away.
delighted
Okay.
when we left on tour for 6 weeks.
So the student population grew and grew. What was its peak? I mean, how
500 students
500
Annually.
Annually. I mean,
and a faculty of 25.
But don't forget, we did expand.
several times, a couple times.
No, but not only were we piano, we had every instrument of the orchestra,
Mm-hmm.
and a voice department, and classical guitar. So it really, we had 25 faculty members.
I think the first 15 years it was just piano.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 75 it became all instruments of the orchestra, voice.
Melvin also became a conductor. We had a junior orchestra, a senior orchestra, and on Saturdays, I think that was your happiest moment, going down that basement conducting.
You know, just making music together. It was great.
How do you remember everyone?
You know, Walter Piston, a very well-known composer from Harvard, who wrote a concerto for us, and he always said he only remembered the very best and the worst. He never remembered anything in between.
Well, you remember everything.
Yeah, but
You
I think
remember
because of the fact that we would see them all during the week.
Yeah.
And then we would see them on Saturday mornings, every other Saturday morning, see them at the concerts. So we were with them a great deal,
Right.
except when we went on tours. But we just took an interest in them. We wanted them to have a great experience.
What was it like when finally you had to make the decision to close and to end it? That could not have been an easy.
It was
It was-
bittersweet. It was very, very difficult.
We had 6 nights of concerts,
Mm.
and we said farewell to all the parents each night. And they lined up and shook our hands, and the weeping and the wailing. It was really, it was tragic.
Right.
But it's not that we had to move on. The area was changing.
Yeah.
You know, people didn't feel that classical music was necessary. The cell phones came in, TV wiped out the interest. It all became popular. We felt we couldn't compromise musically or our standards. If we wanted to remain, we'd be teaching everything Billy Joel was singing, or people of the time.
Because we weren't in the city, we were in the suburb.
Right, so it was.
But, and somebody just happened to knock on the door and they wanted to buy the building, so.
We had just completed a last renovation for about $800,000. We had an auditorium that seated 250 people with a stage in the middle, 125 on one side, 125 on the other. We had 15 teaching studios.
But I think it was a time to move on.
Yeah.
And after being there for 39 years, but we wanted to add to our mission.
Right.
And this was to work with extremely gifted young musicians who were really training to be musicians. So it was a changeover, but I think it was
We spent
a good time.
a year and a half investigating what to do.
What to do next?
And we contacted a woman who was a professor of, at, I think, University of Maryland. And she had just written a book on competitions.
So this kind of takes us into our next area,
Yes.
where did you give any thought to saying, you know what, we've done well, we've been successful, why don't we retire?
No.
That never popped up in your mind?
Still doesn't.
Never.
Still does. Well, we're all grateful for that.
No.
So you closed the school, okay, what's next?
And we did a lot of research and competitions. And we wanted to come up with something different. And we did. First, our age group was younger, but we were the first competition and are still the only competition in the world out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We have no elimination of contestants.
Once they're accepted.
Right.
Once they are an applicant to become a contestant, they play every round, all the 4 rounds, where every other competition they will eliminate after the first round, the second, and they'll have maybe 6 finalists. But we have never done that. We've always felt they can have a great first round and a poor first round, or not a good first round, and then they have a great second, third, fourth round. So why eliminate them?
That's been our theory throughout all the years, that you don't compromise somebody because of a mistake or 2 mistakes. Once the child or the youngster or the pianist has been accepted, that contestant deserves to be heard throughout the week.
And every biannual term that you do this, you get more and more applicants. This is another example of
Well,
where.
of course, we're now
your success-
international.
Now, yes, it's
and
expanded.
they've come from as far as Oslo and Denmark and China and Japan and New Zealand and Australia. They come from all over.
But now, of course, when we started the competition in 2002, and now it's 2019, and some of the contestants who were in their teens now are in their
30s.
early 30s, mid-30s. It's very exciting to see that out of, let's say, 190 laureates, maybe 2 or 3 did not remain in the business, in the musical field.
Right.
But they've all done, so many have done extremely well, teaching in great schools, performing. It's extremely gratifying to see. Of course, a lot of that comes from the screening. We're very careful in how we screen, try to pick out the very, very best. And it's wonderful to see the results of so many of them today.
It almost seems over, as we herald your 60 years, that you have, throughout all these generations, really have cultivated a community of people. Of tens of thousands of people that you have touched. Was that, I don't want to say it was an accident, but do you ever look back and go, wow? When you realize how many lives that you've touched and how many people are...
I think we think about it, but we don't dwell on it. For instance, we had a contestant who was with us, I think, in 2010, who has just received his doctorate at Yale. And we gave him so many opportunities to perform, even though he was past the age. He needed these performances. And we just got a note from him saying that he's so grateful to us for giving him the opportunity to do so many things, which added to his requirements for a doctorate at Yale. And we have many people like that. We're honorary grandparents now of many of them.
And you also get to perform as something that is, you talk about the changing taste in music. The number of venues has gone down, and I think it's one thing to play in a practice room and play very well, but any artist needs to have their work seen and experienced by the public. Why is that so important, and it's a challenge these days?
Well, I think
logistically,
the way to put that most clearly, we presented a pianist once, David Bar-Ilan, very fine pianist. And after the concert, we had a luncheon for all the women who wanted to come. It was a morning series, so mostly women came. And somebody asked him, what teacher do you give most credit to. And he thought just for a few seconds, and he said, the concert stage. And I think that left a great impact on us. We knew it ourselves. I mean, we learned many, many things.
We grew enormously
from the concert stage.
Giving
so,
concerts.
as a result of that comment and all, we felt that our young people who come to the competition, we would like them to have the opportunities of performing. So our other program is a Young Artist Series. And they have the opportunity, probably the first time, these are young people from universities, conservatories. They never played a full recital. And we will give them the opportunity of playing for an hour and a half. They learn tremendously what to do.
A perfect example, our first prize winner this year played her first concert at the Phillips Collection, a great, great concert series in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks later, she played for us in Osney, New York. 2 weeks after that, she played for us at Temple Emmanuel in New York City. She had 3 successive concerts, and she said in her life, she never thought she'd get through it. And she felt so fantastic because she's really prepared to accept any challenge now. And it really does work.
So that kind of transitions. We kind of end our conversation with the beginning of when you were starting out. And it was a very different world.
It truly was.
I mean, what are your earliest memories of heading out on the road and you didn't know how to drive a truck? I mean,
right.
It's just, talk about against the odds.
We had to deadhead is the term, from New York City to Ada, Oklahoma.
In the truck.
In the truck. I had never been through the Midtown Tunnel.
And when we got the truck, the truck was delivered to my parents' home in Far Rockaway.
Okay, small driveway. I mean,
They share the driveway between
and we practiced driving in the driveway, going up the driveway, and then going back reverse. And then we took the truck and we drove around the Lawrence Golf Course. And
it took our lives in risk and everybody else around us.
I mean, and just being on the road those days. In those days, I mean, you were everything. You had to. I mean, talk about. You had to navigate. You had to go to these different locations, building the piano, setting up the piano every day.
Every venue we went to, we either had the fire department, the police department, or high school seniors or college football team assist us in unloading the pianos, which weigh 1,000 pounds apiece.
if it was a bigger town, they might have 4 or 5 professional movers come, but we never depend upon it.
Right.
So we had to supervise all the loading. Norm would be in the hall, I'd be in the truck, and then after the concert, we'd set the pianos down again on the skid boards, put them back in the truck, go to a reception that the sponsors would have.
Change our clothing in the truck. I mean, it was just unbelievable. This was in International Falls, 20 below, no heat in the truck. And I'd be strapping everything up while Melvin was wrapping the blankets on the
Second piano.
second piano. It just,
But we did it.
I just the other day I was looking out the window and I said to Mel from the office here, can you remember 4 o'clock in the morning I would peer through the window to see there's a snowstorm in Virginia, Minnesota. How are we going to get out of here? You know, we had to be somewhere 400 miles away for a concert the next day. And we just plowed our way through and crept our way through. There were times we came into a town. I remember the highway had closed in Oregon somewhere, and we had to re through a detour, and we came into the hall at 6:45, 7 o'clock, and hadn't eaten yet breakfast or something.
I think somehow we were, maybe because the two of us, one couldn't do it, but we had to leave one night after a concert, Denver, Colorado. And we were going to Omaha, Nebraska.
To play in Boys Town.
We couldn't stay overnight because it was about a 600-mile trip. So we had to drive at night. And when we left Denver,
there had been a blizzard, but all of a sudden it cleared out. The moon was out. It was a bright night, but it was sub-zero weather.
And it was absolutely freezing in the truck. And we knew something was wrong with the
What controls the
It controls the heat.
The radiator?
Well, not the radiator. I think
It's small
the thermostat.
thermostat.
Oh, okay.
So there wasn't any gasoline station open, and we stopped off in an ammunition factory, and somebody came out, and they were kind enough. They looked in the truck. So you don't have the thermostat.
It's gone. So I'll take it out for you, and you just better ride without.
So we
the
drove
heat.
600 miles in this sub-zero weather
With no heat.
no heat, and we had to keep warm. So we took some of the blankets off the pianos, wrapped ourselves in the blankets, and drove all night.
Looked like two Indian squaws. He looked at me, and the sun came out, and I looked at him, and we went hysterical laughing. I mean,
Well, see, I want to ask you about that, because there are a lot of performers who would say, this is not worth it. Okay, I can't. This is too...
yeah.
I mean, it seems like you were always, as tough as things were.
when I said it wasn't worth it was many, many years later. We were in Antwerp, Belgium, and we had come from, I think, Salzburg, and we missed everything because of a blizzard.
Right.
So we finally made the concert, and then we came into Antwerp, and Mel said, you know, I have a very sharp pain on my right side. And that meant I had to carry all the luggage because I thought he was either having an appendicitis attack or something like that. And we finally got to a doctor in Antwerp, and Mel went upstairs. We were staying at a townhouse somewhere, and they both came down laughing. What had happened?
We were in Zurich at a very nice hotel the night before, and they had these brass doorknobs.
Very
On the
big
door.
brass doorknobs.
And I didn't think about it until after the doctor examined me. I must have walked into that doorknob, and I bruised myself, but it wasn't.
your battlefield
So that's when
injuries
he-
there.
And I was dragging all over the airport in Amsterdam, which is just endless.
At this point, you're playing thousands upon thousands of concerts. You're playing big halls like Radio City. Then you're playing smaller venues
Absolutely.
as well. Did the venue change how you performed?
No.
You know what I mean? I'm saying a bigger house, bigger shows.
No, that's a great question. I would say that we never, ever played down to an audience.
We never compromised.
If we played a small town of, let's say, 3,500,
Yeah.
and the next night we were playing a bigger city, the program would be the same. The encores would be the same. We never, ever played down to an audience, ever.
The quality, I think that's why we had a success. We were under the management of Columbia Artists for many years, and the representatives, they had, 40, 45, 60 representatives, and they knew they could count on us.
They did the booking of the concerts.
We never turned a reception down. We delivered. We never played a concert unless we played maybe 3, 4 encores.
Right.
I don't ever remember a concert, and I'm trying not to be an egomaniac or so, but I don't think we ever played a concert where the audience didn't stand at the end.
They do that more commonly today. Years ago, everybody gets a standing ovation today.
That's
Everybody.
changed, yeah.
But
years
the
ago-
last encore we played, most of our careers, was a Bach chorale. You know, Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring. I mean, we gave them all the ammunition up front, but we knew we had to get off the stage. And we came out and we played this simple, beautiful chorale, and it ended so quietly, and nobody moved. And then finally we got up slowly, and they screamed and they screamed. That was our way of communicating.
The only time we didn't do 4 encores, we might have done 3, is when we were in Nevada. I think it was Vegas or somewhere that
And
I knew we had to leave early the next morning, and I thought it'd be nice to get to the gambling tables before I went to bed.
and Carson City.
Carson City.
So you only did 3
So I did
encores.
3, so I could go back to the hotel, change,
And lose
go
more
down.
money.
Yeah, well, do you miss touring? A lot of work. I mean,
Oh,
it's-
yeah.
I mean,
I was
glad you did it.
I would never go out to play one concert. We've done it. We feel very satisfied with the touring. Let's say if somebody asked me this a couple of years back, I would say, yeah, if you had a tour of 20 or 25 concerts,
You practice
I
as
would
much
like
for
to
one
do.
concert as you do for 30.
But I miss it, but I think that we have a great deal of satisfaction for all that we've done.
Right.
You know, I must clarify one thing. We didn't drive the truck all throughout 40 years on. It was after 5 years of driving that we finally hired a driver.
Right.
And several of our drivers came from the 5 towns where the school was. One in particular was Nick Majorino, who was an ex-policeman, a detective or so, and he toured with us for 6 or 8 or 10 years, and we still keep in contact with him. And as we did for several drivers that were with us, we had some horrendous experiences as well, where a driver who was a former superintendent of, not superintendent of schools, but superintendent of a building in a school, drove for us. And when we got to Michigan somewhere, he says, "Oh, by the way, I brought my wife with me," and that wasn't contracted. So we had to call up the lawyer and see if she's covered with insurance. Then we went up to Canada, and he crashed into a rock, and we had to bail him out coming down the whole Princeton Highway and get other. I mean, the experiences that we had with breakdowns were horrendous. But we managed to get through.
And now today you go from navigating the country with road maps and blankets over your shoulders to now you're on social media and everything modern. And what are you hoping to do with your social media presence these days? It seems it's a similar theme to what you've done in the past in terms of, like we say, building a community and reaching out. But
I think one of our greatest desires is to reach many of the students that were in the school, just to have contact with them so that we can communicate, know what they're doing today. Of course, it's nice to know if music has any part of their lives. But I'm always interested. I think of so many names and I wonder, where are they?
But also, I think that this is not our world. But
where is your world?
but it has to be important today, because our world years ago was newspapers, print. That's where we had all our publicity. Wherever we went, there were press releases that went out. When I played my recital at Carnegie Hall in '51, we had 8 newspapers in New York. You were bound to get 4 or 5 reviews, plus 2 or 3 magazines, well-known magazines, Musical America, Musical Courier.
The Times, the Herald Tribune, PM, Post,
But today,
Brooklyn Eagle.
if you, let's say, play in a major hall in New York, and you have a management who will produce the concerts, you don't have any guarantee you're going to get any review. Nothing at all anymore. So that's what makes it very, very difficult for young people. And that's why we have to turn also to keep the foundation active and keep all our young artist series, concerts active. So we must turn to the social media for that.
I guess we're musical missionaries at this point. Really trying to keep the religion alive. And we proselytize as much as we can, only for the sake of music. And I believe we truly want to help these young people who have really no opportunity. They get their degrees at school. They need performance opportunities. They need all these opportunities that give them the dimension that makes them complete.
And for, we speak of all of this talent, but for the rest of us who didn't necessarily make a living with music, what do you hope we got out of the school, and why is it so important that
I think the
you still
greatest thing we
wanna hear
got from
us?
you is that you're a board member now.
Well, that's me.
No,
Yeah.
but that's true of David Roseblum, who's on the board.
Right.
It's true of Evan Steen, who's on the board.
But I think we will also,
It's a community that I just don't want to lose.
we want them to have marvelous memories of the past and what they had at the school. And I think that's so very important. Like the memories we have with our careers. They have memories of being at the school.
That's why we still held on to these things. The original, the original lamps, the original
Maybe
tables.
that's a good way just to close here. You hold on to everything, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, it really
we
is.
don't let go.
Yeah, I mean, and And this is where these interviews would happen. And
Absolutely.
how old is this couch? I mean,
Purchased in 1960.
so it's original.
That's the original.
That's-
It was reupholstered once, and by the same people from whom we bought. Do you remember the Lennox shop in Hewlett?
I do actually. Yes.
That's where it came
wow,
from.
Okay.
And
You
this
got your money's
table,
worth out of the couch.
that's a butter churn that we bought, and it was an antique butter churn turntable bought in Pennsylvania. And this is an old student desk, an original old student desk.
We bought this in '59, the
Yeah.
year before the school opened.
We knew we were going to be opening, and these kettles were just copper kettles that we had refinished and made lamps out of them. And we have a lot of things. These screens here were on the stage.
That's right.
Yeah,
I remember.
and we.
I'm going to ask Norman, has a very good memory.
Yeah,
How much did we pay for that copper kettle?
$2.50.
$2.
$2.50.
Yeah, but